Right. Okay, here we are live. Hello, LinkedIn. Hello, Qualified Tutor Community, and hello to my lovely friend Sharana. We are here for QT Book Club. We run this conversation once a month to explore basically some of the books on my bookshelf over there, the books that I call small and mighty. So the books that are not lengthy, but pack a punch. And the one that we are going to cover today is really very, very big and heavy and deep and profound. It's a little bit too profound, to be quite honest. It's slightly woo-woo, so you're going to have to forgive me. The book is called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you know how to pronounce that? Nope.
Ruiz.
Okay. So this book, the first chapter is entirely missable because it goes off on a weird mystical story. But the four agreements are profound. And so I'm going to switch from the book to this poster that I ordered about the four agreements. Okay. And this is what Sharana and I are going to explore today because we run a book club where nobody reads the book but me. And the way that we do that is that we explore the ideas together, which is, I'm an English teacher. That's what I do for a living. So the four agreements are, Sharana, can you read this or is it backwards for you?
Yeah, I know.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'll read out your
Just the
word.
titles.
Oh, hang on. Be impeccable with your word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, speak, if you put it a bit closer. Do you want me to read out the full thing? Speak with
No.
integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using words to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Use the power of your word to offer love. Never use it to cause fear or pain in another or
So
yourself.
great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So the four agreements are be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And as Sharon has just pointed out, we're going to start with the purple box. Be impeccable with your words. Now, I feel that this is worthwhile for us to explore because of the way that it affects our students, because of the way that it affects ourselves and our families, and because really these principles are they are the behaviors that we would want to be, we would want to see, and we would want to mentor. As we know, tutoring has a heavy dollop of mentoring in it. And as computer learning is taking over, delivering curricula at a pace that no human will be able to keep up with, there will always be a role for tutors because there will always need to be a lead learner. There will always need to be somebody who will be setting the tone, leading the way, building relationship, and really helping our young people to grow up to be healthy humans. And so these four agreements for me really sum up what it means to be a healthy human, to be impeccable with your words, not to take anything personally, which I struggle with, not to make assumptions, and always to do your best. And there's a lot that we're going to unpack. Now, if you are a qualified tutor member and you are listening to this on LinkedIn, we implore you, use the Zoom link. It's the same one as usual, and come and join us live because otherwise, Sharona and I are going to have to work really, really hard in this session. But we will do it because you showed up, and so we will show up. So the first section about being impeccable with your word, I will read it again. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using words to speak against yourself, negative self-talk, we know about that, or to gossip about others. Use the power of your words to offer love. Never use it to cause fear or pain in another or yourself. So there's two threads that I would love to pull out here. One is our own personal well-being and that point about negative self-talk that I've just touched on. And the other is how we model being impeccable with our words for our students and what that does for them. Sharana, I know that you've done the Foundations of Effective Tutoring course, and it overlaps quite closely with our 7Ps of professionalism, and that positivity and patience that we model for our students. So what are your thoughts about this first agreement?
I think it's a very important one. I personally, I think it's might be intrinsic. Actually, everyone is different, so they might be working towards this. But I genuinely always have very positive self-talk, and it's also part of this self-soothing. Have you heard of this concept of,
Please tell
when
us.
things are, well, when things aren't quite going well, and you almost like hype yourself up to yourself, and talk positively. So people can either have this very negative self-talk, can be very hateful towards themselves, or think they are failures or stupid or all of that. Um, and, who knows where people pick up their own self-talk. But I remember naturally from very early on, I've always had very positive self-talk. So I also like to tell other people because they might not think that it's an option to have positive self-talk. But if you know that somebody isn't automatically into negative self-talk, it might just give them a window to, oh, maybe that is possible. Maybe I can do this for myself. So I'm not to say that everything is, all hunky-dory and like rainbows and sunshine. But I personally have positive self-talk as one of the good things that
that's immense. And I'm not surprised because you come across with such gentleness and positivity. But will you see if you can show us where it comes from? I mean, obviously this is not a psychoanalytic conversation, but it can be helpful.
I think I've always written a journal or a diary from when I was like really young, maybe from when I was 8 years old. And kind of a journaling about my feelings really from very early on, and something that my older sister encouraged me to do. So I've always had somewhere to go to actually pour all my feelings out. And that's kind of continued up until now. So I have this self-talk already.
Yes.
And, that's kind of where I go, where I need to spill things out. So it is a very kind of encouraging thing. Things will be better, or, things will work out, or just process and talk through. So that's where the self-talk comes in. And a lot of it has just become naturally positive.
Fantastic. And so do you censor your journal to keep it positive, or?
No, it's not censored at all. It's literally like a brain dump. So it's funny. I remember when I had to write essays for school, sometimes I would struggle because you are censoring things and there's a lot of block. But when I'm writing it for myself, it's only for my own eyes. Anything can come up. So no, I don't censor it, but I will process stuff. But I will actually all end up with like a conclusion thing is a positive mantra or a positive something.
Oh, mantras. So I was wondering about mantras as well. In terms of, it says use the power of your word to offer love. Do you ever develop mantras that keep you going?
Very much. And again, it's something I don't know that developed, and I'd love to hear what your personal things are as well.
I
Your
will share
mantras
because this is certainly not an interview, it's a discussion.
exactly. So I remember going through a particular sort of crisis about maybe 15 odd years ago, and I was in a pretty negative spiral, negative space. But I remember, I don't know even where it came from, but I pulled myself out of it by having a few positive affirmations and mantras that I would kind of look at and repeat to myself throughout the day. And every week I would renew it based on that theme. And I'm not really sure where it came from, but it's a bit of a prayer, it's a bit of a mantra, it's a bit of a positive affirmation. That was really amazing. So that's almost like a tool that I sometimes use. Not always. I think it's at the depths of your despair that you kind of reach those places. But they are available to me, to everyone, if they want to, because it can really, I think sometimes it can really pull you out.
That's really interesting that you say that it's from the depths of despair, because I've certainly, one of the mantras that I've used in the past is this too shall pass. And this too shall pass just gives you hope. Just, when you can't feel optimistic, it gives you optimism for optimism. One day
Yeah.
you will feel optimistic again. And I first learned it when my fifth baby was born, because by then I knew how quickly it passed, how quickly those yummy baby phases pass, and how quickly all of those challenges pass, and how quickly there won't be any more nappies to check. All of those things. Somebody said to me recently, you never know when it's the last time that you bathe your baby.
Or pick them up, or
Because there's just a moment when it doesn't make sense anymore, And so this too shall pass is not only for the negative moments in life, it's actually for the positive moments as well. And it helps you to sort of just take a step back and realize that life is long. and to have some perspective really, and brings you back to power, to balance. Now, there was something here that struck me. It says, never use it to cause fear or pain in another. And actually, that reminded me of um, I don't speak negatively about teachers in the slightest, but there are shouty teachers, yeah, and there are shouty teachers because the systems create a power imbalance. There are shouty teachers because the systems create exhausted people who are running classrooms and ask too much of them. There are shouty teachers because everybody's human, but there are definitely shouty teachers, yeah. Now, the children that we work with may well have had a day or a year or years being hurt by somebody else's words. And it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be another child. One of my children is really, really struggling with bullying at the moment. And
Sorry to.
I wonder what, thank you. I wonder what our role is in counterbalancing that, in bringing positivity, in somehow healing the hurt that others do with their words.
Yeah, it's really important because you, as a tutor, you are invited, you are chosen to come into this child's life because when you are sending your kids to school, you have no choice who is going to be in charge of them. You're not handpicking anyone. But here you have the privilege of being chosen to guide them through a certain period of their life. And also, if you want to continue working,
Yeah.
you present yourself in the best way and have that extra dollop of patience, of goodness, of generosity, because it works both ways as well. You also want to spend, let's say, an hour of your time in a pleasant environment too. It works both ways. It's not just for them, it's for you as well. So kind of back to the original, how do you like the responsibility and counteracting that? I think because you choose to do that, there is also that natural, and because you're going to be invited again and again, based on one person who has the power to say, no, I don't want them there again, and yes, I do want them there again.
So it seems to me that what you're pointing to is the fact that there's so much choice that's being made in the tutor student parent relationship that doesn't really happen with the teacher child relationship, right?
Yeah.
A parent can choose a school for the child, but they can't choose the teacher in year 3.
No.
That, and even if they expected the most wonderful teacher to be in year 3, she could easily go on maternity leave and somebody else could cover, and they could struggle in the classroom, and through nobody's fault, the child has a stressful experience. But we won't get called back if we are impatient with a child, unless we are
100%.
right. So we discuss this in the Foundations of Effective Tutoring course, that impatience is make or break. You raise your voice at a child, that's it, you're done. Unless it's a really intentional, we use the phrase in parenting that if a child runs out into the road, of course you're supposed to shout,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
If a child was, I can't even imagine a case where you may want to perform anger with a child if a child wasn't living up to their own abilities, and but you wouldn't feel it, you wouldn't trigger it. So what you're saying is, because we have this chosen relationship, this opt-in relationship where the parent's given you the privilege of working with their child, where you've chosen to put yourself in this environment for an hour, and actually you're far more in control of it than you would be in a school environment. You're in control of what you cover, of the time, of your pace, and you're just there for that one student or group of students. You have that freedom to really model and be that person that's going to change their life. And that takes us back to the mentoring piece. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it is that connection. And I know you shared something with the group about AI tutoring.
Yeah.
And we all know, if I was having this conversation with the smartest AI Julia robot, it would not be the same because, you can't You can't program that spontaneous thoughts, or that's something that you've learned, or sharing things or lived experiences. So, and the thing is, there's all this information out there, right? If you wanted to teach yourself something, you can log on to anything, find information, and sit down and teach yourself. And as adults, we might be a bit better at it, but not everybody. But children find it very difficult to teach themselves something unless they're extremely motivated, or it's a computer game, or it's a dance that all their friends are doing, then they can teach themselves great. But sitting in front of an AI tutor to teach themselves is probably something very, very few kids can and want to do. So you need that human connection to model that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I think there's a cultural piece. Firstly, I need to share with you that you made my heart flip slightly when you told me that an AI me wouldn't be the same as a me. Isn't that funny that I need that reassurance? But that's sort of what the world feels like right now. So I lost my train. Tell me again, where were we?
Mentoring, reassurance.
So yes, okay, cultural.
Cultural.
Yeah. Okay. So Sal Khan, who created Khan Academy, created this Khan. He has an online school, and he has an AI tutor, and he has all of these fantastic resources that are all funded by the Bill Gates Foundation. Okay. So he has created an absolute, a leading space in online learning. But he always says, and when he launches online school, he always says, this is only for self-motivated students.
Okay. Yeah? Interesting.
Okay? So you see where I'm going there, right? So we're saying if the student comes from a culture and has a structure and has an inner yearning to progress and achieve academically, then an online context could work well for them. But if either they don't have those things, or they actually have a completely different set of, I have a friend who homeschools, home educates, and one of her children went off to forest school this week. Mm-hmm. And he said, he's 9 years old. He said, how do I explain forest school to the neighbors who go to school all day? So we were talking about the differences, right? There are so many assumptions that we make about what education looks like and what good looks like in education, but really it's coming from what we expect as parents and what we bring out in our children. Yeah. So there are some, to come back to where we were, there are some children who can self-study, and there are some adults who can self-study because they are coming from a place and have the beliefs that enable those behaviors. And there are others who have a different set of priorities, a different set of focuses, with no sense of what's better and worse, that will potentially give more focus on creativity, on exploration, on problem solving, on relationship building, but not so much with the discipline and the self-regulation for self-study. And that's where the mentor comes in. And to bring us full circle to our first agreement, to be impeccable with your word means to follow through on being that person for that young person, which is actually an immense privilege, a total responsibility. And sometimes, so I don't know if you're the same. You're probably not, because you're extremely nice, but I'm sometimes nicer to the people in Tesco's than I am to my own family.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean?
It depends on the day as well. I'll tell you, what it is. Have you ever gone on holiday and you're sat in like a breakfast thing, and somebody on the other table has dropped their fork, let's say, on the ground. Now, this won't bother you because it's somebody else, but if your kid dropped the fork,
hilarious.
It would be like, obviously it was too close to the thing or whatever. And it just made me feel that the way you can have don't need to be affected by somebody else's habits that might be annoying or something that happens, but when it's your own family.
Okay, so it's almost like you planned that. Agreement number 2 is don't take things personally, right? So let's go back to the fork. Somebody else's child dropping a fork is not personal. But yeah. Why did the fork from your table make you feel, well, firstly, what did it make you feel?
I just remember this on holiday. I just remember because it was always like so close to the edge. It was like doing this particular thing, and it
If
was
it was
just
at
like,
home, would it be the same?
no, the thing is, I'm
Okay.
actually quite laid back and it doesn't actually matter. But I just noticed how, you know, if somebody picks up a napkin and is like all like got jam or crap on it, you know, on holiday, then it doesn't like it just doesn't affect me. Like I can't like it's them. It's got nothing to do with me. But if it's your own kids, for some reason, I'm not really
Okay, so
sure
there's
why.
a few things. I'm gonna unpick it for you because it's such a nice example. So, firstly, those children, you're seeing them as an extension of yourself,
Probably, yes.
right?
Yeah.
Next, you're out in the world, and so you're representing.
Hmm.
And they are like the free radicals. I don't really know what that means, but they're out there representing you, and you can't entirely control them,
Yeah.
right? So, one of my kids used to go to school with ketchup on his shirt.
Okay.
I promise you, he always put a clean shirt on in the morning. But in the half hour that it took him to get from the front door to school, he always ended up with ketchup. I don't know how
Yeah.
it happened. I don't know what to tell you. And it wasn't even that I served ketchup for breakfast. He was just one of those children. He was just a mucky pup, right?
Yeah.
And so I very quickly had to learn not to associate his appearance with my sense of self-worth. And
Yes.
actually, I was a better mother for not demoralizing him. Look, if we were still in the house and I could get him to change his shirt, then fantastic. But if we were already halfway to school, the last thing he needed me to do was embarrass him.
100%. And to
Yeah.
like make him feel rubbish or yeah.
Because he can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in don't take anything personally. I've been reflecting on this. The addiction, the is it 12 steps? And the Alcoholics Anonymous, all
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
addiction
Yeah. Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So the mantra is give
I
me
know.
the wisdom to know what I can change. Give me the wisdom to change what I can change, to accept what I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes.
That's what yeah, okay. The wisdom to know the difference is quite a profound thing, okay? Because what does it mean to not take anything personally? So it says here, nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is the result of their own dream or perception of their rules. We all make rules about how things should be. But when you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. So you can't control other people's rules.
Yeah. It's a very deep, it's a really important thing because we know that you can't control other people. And you have to also, you can't control the people in your immediate, like your immediate family, your immediate circle. They are their own beings, right? Um, they're on their own journeys, even though there is that thread of connection, very tangible connection, they are still their own beings. And it's true, like throughout our lives, we'll go through bullying ourselves, or as you know, when it's your children as well, you feel it double, triple. It's horrendous.
Horrendous.
And you're right, and you need to detach from it, as difficult as it is, because that is like a spiral of just energy that consumes you day in, day out.
Yeah, it's immense, and I have this, for me, this I find this one very difficult, and so it feels like if I was like that, I would be able to brush things off, and how wonderful would that feel? It occurs to me as well that it's like the difference between being a control freak and being in control,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not a control freak in the slightest. In fact, I'm a little bit the opposite. I'm a bit laissez-faire, right? So for me, the goal of being in control very much parallels not taking things personally, because once you know that you've taken care of the things that you are in control of, how could anything else be personal?
Yeah, it's a tough one to put in practice, and it's very much a case by case. And I just also want to point out that you might be feeling very sensitive and strongly about some things, certain things. There are other things happening in your life in parallel that you've probably not paid any attention to.
So
But if you were
true.
to put them under a microscope and in another parallel universe, you might actually find those things, you might be particularly sensitive to those things, but for some reason, you don't have the time or attention for those, so they're not affecting you, even though they could easily affect you if you wanted to or chose to. So I don't know if you've ever felt this, you feeling bad about something, somebody might have said something, you're in a particularly bad place, but then something else happens, which is either some kind of an emergency, something takes you out of that zone, right? And for half an hour, you've forgotten about the thing you were sensitive about because your mind was elsewhere. And it just makes you realize that actually it really is all in your head, because if you put your attention on something else, whether it came to you completely by chance or not, you wouldn't have been affected by that. And so
Yeah.
many things are happening in parallel. Some things you're putting your attention on and some things you are not, but you could easily be putting your feeling bad about things that you actually don't care about. So
That's really interesting. I think there's sort of reframing involved in that, isn't there? And sort of like,
yeah.
moving your attention somewhere else is a really helpful strategy, as is mantras that we were discussing earlier. So ways that you can reassure yourself to not take things personally is definitely helpful. I learned a lot about this as a school leader
Mm-hmm.
because everybody brings you their stuff. And I had an office that was like it was tiny. It was tiny. I had this tiny little office, and people used to come in and bring all their stuff. And it was almost like the room got filled with emotional energy. There was always tissues on my desk because somebody always needed it. And sometimes it was nice reasons, but even when the kids used to come in for the golden book and I used to give them the stickers and all of that, there was it was like a really emotionally charged environment. And one of the things that I learned really quickly was to understand, especially when it was a teacher who came to me crying, what is her stuff
Mm-hmm.
and what is my stuff, right? What things do I need to change or apologize for or, do differently? And what things do I just need to hold space for her to get it out and not pick it up myself, right? So I used to have this visual of somebody would bring their emotions and drop them at the floor at my feet.
Yeah.
And I had the choice whether or not to pick them up.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, it was good.
That's really
I
good,
wish I'd
actually.
remembered that sooner.
Last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that and it's funny because like you said before, sometimes you only learn the strategy when you are really at a time of intense need.
Yes. I think it forces you sometimes to cope with it,
Yeah.
to make it sustainable, because there's a high stress in those times.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable to be in high stress all the time. So there are going to be things you're going to let go of. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't realize how lovely this conversation was going to be, and I'm really enjoying it. I wanted to point out though, when it comes to taking things personally, we are at a disadvantage as tutors. A teacher in a school has lots and lots of barriers between themselves and yes.
Yes.
So I don't want to say that there's, if a parent has a problem, they have to phone the school office and the office will get a message to you. And by the time you get back to them, it may well be that the parent has de-escalated slightly. A
Mm-hmm.
simple example, right? If the student doesn't get their predicted grade in an exam, as a teacher, you've got lots of reasons why that may be the case, lots of contextual reasons that are outside of your remit. But as a tutor, you've sort of been brought in to do that thing. There are lots of sharp points that we are exposed to as tutors, simply being in somebody's home, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're very exposed. Somebody chooses to cancel lessons with you. Yeah. How do you not take it personally? So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts about how exposed we are as tutors?
That's a really good point, actually. Trying turn, and I think maybe the best thing is to know yourself. And if you've believed that you've brought your best full self to the table, and I guess like with any relationship, so this might be a tutoring relationship, but just like with a friendship or a romantic relationship, sometimes things won't quite work out. And that's good. You can either try and repair that, or, there's also a self-reflection of taking responsibility of why this may have happened. And I think that's really important to say, look, it's not always going to be perfect, because this is our life journey after all. So there are no guarantees with a school teacher relationship, with a tutoring relationship. There's no guarantees for anything that it's going to work out. And by working out, meaning that either they get the grade or they are extremely happy or anything like that. But we're probably measuring it at the moment by getting particular grades or retaining information, or, developing a report. But sometimes it's not going to work out. And I think everybody, and parents as well, should also know that sometimes it's not going to be a good fit. You can try it, but if it's not a good fit, it's okay to cut that off and try somewhere else. So you might think there's a lot of pressure. You've been brought in to turn things around, but you can only find out and see if that's going to be the case, and then decide. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Of course it does. One of my favorite experiences in tutoring was when I passed a student on to somebody who was better skilled to deal with her specific needs.
Yes.
And the parent, the child, and I were so pleased with that decision, because it was clearly the right thing for the child. So it wasn't personal in the slightest. It was just the right thing to do. But it seems to me that it comes back to that thing of reflective practice, and us being sure that we've done our best work, right? We've done the best that we can do, which actually takes us on to, well, we're going to skip number 3. We'll come back to it in a second. Always do your best. Now, to me, always doing your best exactly answers what you've just said. And, we're launching our supervision circles, our second season of supervision circles next week, which will be running fortnightly, which is free to qualified tutor members. And if you're not a member, you can opt in. It will be hosted by a coach who's a former teacher, Jacqueline McGill. And what she'll be doing is helping us to reflect on what's going well and what's going not so well in our tutoring. What that does is it empowers you to not take things personally. It empowers you to always do your best. Now, the important thing about your best is it's different on different days.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about doing your best?
I think the intention is always to come in and hope it's a successful session. But there will be, the student may have a bad day or not as prepared, or you never know how things are going to turn out. And I think when you first start, you also put a lot of pressure as a tutor on yourself that everything has to be perfect. And maybe over time you realize that actually some days are going to be great. Other days are going to be like, just kind of beige,
Yeah.
And actually, and I think as with most of the tutors, when you've had a lesson and it's didn't go quite well, you will be ruminating on it for a bit. Because I think we all have the intention of wanting everything to be really good all the time. But it's natural to know that things come in cycles. And if you hear other people that they've had a bit of a, less than amazing experience on one day, but, then it's great and it all kind of evens out, then okay, this is normal. So a lot of it is about normalizing that you go in with this intention, but sometimes something might just throw you off. But if you know that other people have experienced this, then it's okay. You can say next week will be different.
I really like that. I really like how working alongside other people, working in context with other people makes a big difference there, because I definitely felt when I was working alone as a tutor, I was so much more vulnerable to um, doubting myself, to feeling insecure. I didn't realize that that's what it was at the time, but certainly in the WhatsApp group that we've got in Qualified Tutor, we've got this like really supportive network of it's okay, yeah, we've all been there. Somebody said that somebody just said yesterday that she finished a session 15 minutes
Oh,
early. So two people popped up and said, yeah, I've done that. And then one person
yeah,
said, I finished a session 15 minutes late. And nobody complained that time, right? So that thing about it's funny because it's normal
yeah.
really, really helps. And I think that's a really helpful way of dealing with this whole concept, because to me, anything that starts with always is very triggering, because I can't always anything, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a creature of cycles, and sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, and that's human.
But
Um,
none of us can always anything,
right.
you know, and I think we also have to be able to sit with our disappointment when things didn't quite go well, or the conversation didn't go, or the concept wasn't received well, or somebody was a bit frustrated. And I think we just really have to sit with it and say, it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be different next time. Or let's see how it's
Yeah.
going to be over the period, because it's actually okay to have less than stellar experiences. I think we're also programmed to have this big dopamine hit from everything always working out, and then always having to report that it was fantastic and da da da. But sometimes your concentration might be less, you know. And I think though, if the intention is to go in and try and be your best version, but if it still doesn't quite work out, then to know that others have gone through it, and it's just a small bit of that time in your life, and that's it. That's all it is. It will be over, and then you'll have another opportunity next time.
This too shall pass.
It does too. It does
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And there's so many directions that we can take this in, because again, if we think about school, so the book that I was listening to this week was The Great
Mhm.
School Rethink by Frederick Hess. And it was fantastic. And he was pointing out that really we need to do better thinking rather than more reforms in school. So he's talking about there's so much reform and so little improvement. And why is that happening? Is because we don't sit with questions long enough. We don't ask the questions about what our intentions are, why things are organized the way that they are in school. We just lurch from one improvement to the next. So it occurs to me that that thing of, accepting imperfection and not always lurching to the next great big solution, but actually sitting with, I don't quite know. I don't let's explore this together. And my answer may be different to your answer, becomes really, really interesting. And it's actually why I decided to put my time and attention into tutoring, is because tutoring is all about different solutions for different people, right? And not just the child, also the practitioner. You are a totally different tutor to any other of our members, and that's what's beautiful, is the uniqueness of it. So always do your best then becomes something that is really complex. Now, before we finish up with the final agreement, which is quite a juicy one, I just want to go back to the way that we mentor. So I know for sure in your tutoring sessions, you help your student to speak kindly to themselves. You help your student not to take things personally when they don't get things right. You
Yeah.
help the student to always try their best, right? Tell me about that.
Um, oh, it's
Because it's
um,
true, yeah? That is who you
I
are
think so.
from.
So it is a very encouraging. It's very much yeah, this self-talk, or and they say, oh, this is too hard, this is tricky, and I do always say, oh, it might be tricky right now, but once we start, you'll see it will all fall into place. And I keep putting these concepts as well. You're probably just missing one small bit, but once we cover it, this will all start to make sense. So a little about filling in those gaps for the student so that they also start to internalize another way to look at things. So rather than saying, yeah, this is really difficult, you have to be super special to understand this, or, rather than reinforcing some kind of, yeah, superiority or some kind of power or some kind of, myth that nobody can get it, I really try and encourage them to think that it's the most accessible thing ever. Because I think just by believing it, or just by knowing that somebody else believes it, that might just be suggestible enough for them to just start opening up their hearts and minds to it and get it a bit better. So I do like simplifying things. I do like making things really accessible, or at least pretending that they are, because I think for all of us, once somebody kind of opens a bit of a door for us, then that's enough.
That's really lovely. So you're saying that you just sort of pull the wall down a little bit. You make
Yeah,
things, yeah?
and also just a lot of reassurance, they'll say, oh, I've totally forgot this, I can't remember anything. And I'll say, it's okay, it's normal to forget. You've got so many other subjects that you're doing. There's so much other stuff going in your life. Don't worry, it's normal, but as soon as you'll see it again, stuff will start coming back to you, and if you just kind of plant these seeds, these positive seeds that things are normal, that it's absolutely fine and it's really not a big deal, then slowly they will they will associate you with that, but they will also start maybe talking to other people like that and themselves like that. So it's a bit of just a bit of spreading a bit of light. Only because what is the other option? The other option is to just keep being really, the other option would be to be mean or unkind or any of those things.
Or neutral, or AI.
Yeah, or AI,
We're picking on AI today. I feel like it can take it.
So yeah, and everybody will have their own version, and people will connect to you in different ways, and you never know what that little thing that that will pick, that they will carry on for the rest of their lives. So there are probably like a handful of things that certain teachers have said throughout my education that I've taken forward with me, and I could have missed that day, I could have been off sick that day or whatever, but I got them and they carry me on. So you never know, out of your 14, 15 years of education, or however many it is, what is going to be that little seed that is going to be that you're going to take on.
You're making me think of that lovely book, have you seen Mitch Albom's books? He wrote Tuesdays with Morrie.
No.
And he wrote another one, The 5 People You Meet After You Die.
Okay.
And these 5 characters show what they learned or what they gained from this character when he passed away. And it's very beautiful because you never, we don't know what impact we have or what seeds we sow, but we certainly show up to sow seeds. That's who we are in the world. We're people who want to make things better. So it's very beautiful. Let's grab the last part of this conversation to look at.
And other people have sown seeds for us. So it's it's very much a cycle,
right.
And sometimes your students sow seeds for you too, I have to say. So, I've definitely had that.
Can you give me an example?
I can, I had this one student who was, it's going to make me really emotional. So no, so he was recovering from leukemia.
Oh.
No, I'm going to start crying. So leave it. Can we?
Yes.
But he'd missed 4 years of school, and I was tutoring him for GCSE, and he was so keen with all of that, and he was just the kindness of it. No, keep going.
Okay, but I got it. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's going to be a connection here. The final one is don't make assumptions. Okay. I'll give you a minute. I'm going to read this to you. Find the quiet courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Assumptions that we make that other people know what we mean. Assumptions that we make that other people think the same that we do.
Mhm.
Yes, assumptions that somebody will say no where they might have said yes if you'd asked. Yeah. Misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. So let's keep this light then. When you take on a new student,
Mm.
how do you ensure that you're not making assumptions about that student? How do you ensure that your information is informed rather than assumed?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we come up with our own projections, and to be honest, I've never actually, I wouldn't have thought of that question at all. Like I've not asked myself that question about assumptions. Um, I guess because it is natural to make assumptions. I think it's like the pieces that you do, the pieces of assumptions and judgments when you meet anybody. I guess it's a way of making sense of the world.
That's right.
Uh, but one of the things I definitely, like a parent, so if we're just keeping to the tutoring realm, so like a parent will say, oh, they find this tricky. And I always think to myself, I never believe that actually, because I need to find out for myself. Sometimes they may label something as they don't quite get it, but they do, or they might say, oh, but I really do like this, but then they're a bit weak on that.
Okay.
So that for sure, I've learned from experience that even if they tell me that they're good at this or they're weak at that, I never believe any of it. I'll find out by myself. So
That's a very teacherish discipline. That ability to sort of just step back and just be like, I'll just see. I'll just give it. I'll find out for myself.
I'll find out.
Yeah, and you see that as well. There's a beautiful thing, the Pygmalion effect. So
Okay.
yes, so there have been studies that show that. Oh, I'll give you the story. This is a lovely little anecdote. A teacher was given set 4 in maths,
Mhm.
and at the end of the year, the head teacher called her in and said, "How did you do it?" And she said, "Do what?" He said, "How did you get set 4 to perform ahead of set 2?" And she said, "I thought they were set 2."
Oh,
And famously, she said afterwards, "I wish I thought they were set 1."
wow.
Right?
That's
So
really amazing.
isn't that powerful? So that's the
Yeah.
Pygmalion effect, which is to say, when you have high expectations from someone, they are more able to live up to them. Dame Alison Peacock has a phrase, learning without limits. Yeah. So when we
Oh,
make
I
assumptions
love that
about,
story.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when we make assumptions about our students, we could quite easily limit what we believe we should cover with them, or the opposite, assume that they've understood something when they didn't. You just didn't pick up that they hadn't.
Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing. Yeah. I like
Okay,
that.
awesome. So we're going to start wrapping up now. And I think what was gorgeous about this conversation, that this book that you no longer need to read because now you know what it says, was that we were exploring how these 4 agreements about being impeccable with your words, about not taking things personally, about not making assumptions, and always doing your best. We spoke about how all of those 4 behaviors are important, are powerful, are difficult. But then we were really gentle about it because never at one stage did we say, and you must be like this. We both said, that would be helpful if I could achieve it. Right. And I think that that's the power of what we can do together, and the power of what we can do for each other and for our students is just take things lightly, because times are tough for many of us. And when you and I started this conversation, we'd said everybody's going through something.
Mhm.
Right? And so one of the best things that we can do in our approach to education, to work, to relationships, is to go gently and to say, yeah, there are best practices, but life's a journey and we're on that way together. So I'm going to wrap up this conversation by reminding you that Qualified Tutor is all about raising standards in tutoring together. And we do that through conversations like this. Sometimes they are really focused on the tutoring practice. Sometimes they're focused on our business practices. And sometimes they're focused on our well-being, because really it's that whole person that can make a difference. We know that education is really struggling, limping along at the moment. And we know that schools, teachers, students, families need all the help that they can get. And that's who we are as tutors. We are serving a point of need. And in order to be that person, we need to build ourselves up. We need to build each other up. We need to make sure that we're not working in silos. We need to make sure that we are working in in I've lost my word. Aligned with each other, in support of each other. We don't have to do each other's work. We just have to encourage each other along the way. And that's how we will build shared practices, shared beliefs, and the collective efficacy that will make a big difference in this profession. Tutoring has come a long way in the last few years, and there's a lot further it needs to go. Tutoring continues to be unregulated. And whilst that's the case, tutors themselves have to opt in to regulation to make sure that we are safe, skilled, and supported. If you want to find out how to do that with Qualified Tutor, you can look on our website and you can apply to become a member. We will welcome you in. And then we will help you to become certified so that parents know that when they work with you, they are working with a tutor who is safe, skilled, and supported. Sharona, you are a very much loved member of our community. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation together. Pelham, thank you for joining us also. I'm going to wrap up this conversation now. Thank you so much for participating. You're
Thank
extremely
you.
brave. See you again.